Join me, fellow artists, as I paint this adorable snowman with watercolor pencils and gouache. Let's get to it. I am using the Caran d'Ache Museum Aquarelle watercolor pencils. This is yellow, and that's it. See, it just says yellow. It's yellow, nothing fancy. I did just a little, as you can see, masking fluid on the brighter side of the snowman, and I did a little bit for the snow. Now my pencil started out pretty sharp because I am getting some fine areas, and the yellow I want my first layer because I want it to, again, it's a lighter color than the cadmium orange or cadmium gold, cadmium yellow. I think that's what that one is. It's kind of an orangey color. And so I do the yellow first, then I'm mixing in a little bit of this color. So when I add water, it should be kind of a nice orange, a light orange color. And I don't need to get the color exactly as the reference photo on the scarf and the hat, but it's kind of nice. I actually like it's like a burnt sienna type of color. So that's kind of what I'm going for. And I'm just doing the lighter colors first. And this is an orange. This is kind of like a cadmium orange because it's pretty bright and it's pretty opaque when you add water to it. And that's the thing with the museum aquarelles is they are more opaque than other watercolor pencils, say like the Faber-Castell. I can't think of their name, but they are like a more transparent watercolor, and these are more opaque, almost like a gouache, right? Or gouache is opaque. And you can see my pencils are pretty sharp. I'm getting now the edges of his cap and just kind of figuring out where I want the folds, getting my values in, right? Getting the shadow is going to be on that right side there. So I'm going darker with the colors on that right side and starting to get a little direction in there, trying to get the curve of his cap. So I'm doing like little C's and going now to the scarf, doing the same thing. Just getting a little texture in there. And you might be able to see I do have some masking fluid in there in the scarf and the hoodie. You can't really see it because the masking fluid is yellow and the colors I'm using are yellow, but I do have some masking fluid that I'm kind of working the pencil around there, trying not to, take it off as I as I draw with my super sharp point. Now I'm going even darker here, and I'm kind of purposely using not too sharp of a point because I want to get more pigment on the paper and get more definitive lines for the scarf, for my shadows and that sort of thing. So I purposely kind of want a lot of pigment on there. And this is, it's like I think it's crimson, and you'll really see it when I add the water, how it really comes to life. So I'm just getting like the first base layers here. I'm going to add water with a watercolor brush, and here in a minute, then I'll let that dry and I'll go to another area. I think I go to the background. And then at the end, I do final details with colored pencils. And again, this is hot pressed watercolor paper. The brand is Fabriano Artistico Extra White. This is the 300 pound. So this is a thicker version than I use if I'm just doing colored pencils, like with OMS or something. Now this was kind of a little tricky part where the scarf overlaps the other end of the scarf. So trying to get like a definitive line there so that the two don't blend together. So I want to make sure that the kind of the tail of the scarf behind the one in the front is a lot darker. Okay, now I'm going ahead and my brush just has water on it. And you can kind of see the masking fluid is there. I'm kind of just pushing pushing the pigment around the masking fluid because I don't want it to be like too much, too white. Anyway, these are great brushes too for smaller areas, but you kind of want to press hard and move the pigment around. I will put the name of them in the description. They're called Rosemary. The brand is Rosemary. And I think I just got like a packet with three sizes. This is like maybe a size 1 or something, but I do have a smaller size that I got from them. Anyway, I really like them. I don't use them with odorless mineral spirits because usually I like when I use odorless mineral spirits, I usually use a cheapy brush because I like to press kind of hard, and I don't want to ruin a good brush, an expensive brush, I should say. And these actually aren't that expensive. Just a reminder to always kind of brush in the direction of like the curve of, say, the cap. I'm not, brushing straight up and down or anything. My brush strokes are with the curve of So I did some Payne's Gray for the background there, really sharp pencil, and I'm laying it practically flat against the paper. And now that is some blue. I'll put the blue that I used in the description. And I actually put some white down in there. There it is, just to kind of blend. I'm not pressing that hard, but I know when I add water, it's going to give it kind of a nice atmospheric effect. When I add the white to it, it will kind of blend it out, make it look a little blurry. It's kind of what I was thinking. So I didn't really want it as dark as, say, what I was doing with the wet on wet. I would have to do a lot of layers. So I thought I'd just do white and then have, more of a contrast with some darker colors like the Payne's Gray, put some violet in there. This is a little violet, and just kind of playing around with the colors. And now I'm going into the snowman because a nice fine line so he just doesn't disappear into the white background. And now I am using another brush, as you can tell, with some water on it. This is the silver brush, blotting up a little bit. I'm kind of just getting my lines of the horizon. I'm figuring out where the horizon is, getting the shadow in here for the snowman. I'm kind of just figuring out where, the snow is going to go, putting everything down. I don't have anything sketched out except for the snowman, the circles for the snowman, and his hoodie and scarf. That's pretty much all I had sketched out. So I'm gonna just kind of figure out the background and the trees as I go. I'm not using that much water on my brush. I really just want control of the pigment. So this is not, like wet on wet or anything like that. Um, and I want control. I'm using my real pointy brush there, the silver brush, which is super pointy. So I have control right there for the edging, and I can make some kind of cloud type of texture as well, and always have a tissue handy. So if you want to blot before it dries too much, you can blot. Now I'm just using a graphite to get in his nose and his eyes, his mouth, and his buttons. Just getting a little guide. Then I do sharpen my watercolor pencils. I get a really sharp point, and I am going to use black for the outline. And then I go in with, at the very end, colored pencil for like a real sharp edging and to get it super, super black. So you don't have to do watercolor pencil with this, with any of this. You can do this with colored pencils and OMS. So really, I mean, you get this the same look with odorless mineral spirits and regular colored pencils. Oil or wax, doesn't matter. So, um, yeah, so this, you can see just super sharp point, getting the carrot in, and then I use a like a 0 size brush to blend all this in with water. And I'm doing his buttons. I'm getting like this is like a yellow ochre for the first coat, and then I go in with some brown, and then I do the edging, the round right there, a little burnt sienna. And because this is a snowman, you can do any color you want. You could do blue buttons if you want. You could do green buttons if you want. You can do any color of buttons or scarf or snows, any colors you want to do. If you're liking this video, please hit that like button and subscribe so I can make more videos for you. Thank you. Any colors that you have and you like, then you do it. You do that color. Now I'm starting to press a little harder. These are kind of getting to my final layers here. I don't do that many layers with the watercolor pencil. I can't really get a fine point with them. So this is a final kind of base coat layers before I go over with colored pencil, I should say. Now you can see I'm doing a little bit, doing some little X's there, trying to get the pattern of the scarf or the knitting of the scarf. And like I said, I really want to keep the scarf on in the front a lot lighter than the one in the back. Kind of try to get the shadow from the one in the front on the one in the back. Now I'm going to my horizon using some Payne's Gray, getting some some structure here, putting in the trees. And I'm not really going as dark on the background and the landscape as I did the first one. This is kind of more of a beginner's tutorial, so I wanted to keep it simple and just fun. And since these trees are in the background, they're going to be pretty blurry, not in focus or anything. So I'm kind of purposely, adding a little extra water there. And this is going to dry a lot lighter too. The watercolor pencils, they dry about 50% lighter, pretty much like any other watercolor. So I'm just going to do a couple more trees, couple shrubs, just a little suggestion because I am going to do the sunset and the sun in the back here. Next up, I'm going to be doing a yellow and oranges. So after that dries, I'm going to do the sun. Now, while the background dries, I'm going back to Mr. Snowman and getting some reflection, the snow on his cheeks, getting a little blue, getting some definition. And this side is his shadow side. So I'm doing the blue. I'm doing a touch of, looks like maybe Payne's Gray or a violet. Have fun with shadows. Violets and grays and Payne's Gray. Yeah, that's definitely Payne's Gray. Blues, dark blues mixed in with maybe even a little red. Violets make a great color for shadows. They're not, like a violet gray or something like that, because then it's not as flat. You really want to try to and I'm figuring out what I want to do because I want to leave a little bit of the white part of his head there. um, so there's a contrast between the snowman and the background, the sky. So I'm kind of making sure I keep a little bit of white there. I didn't put any masking fluid, so I'm just being a little extra careful. And while that dries, I am using a real small brush and with a touch of water on it to activate the watercolor pencil there on his nose, his carrot nose. Now I'm going in sharp pencil, a little burnt sienna, getting some more detail in there in his cap, and I still have the masking fluid on. I'm going to leave that on as long as I can because I really want it to be white, even though I am going to use gouache. I'm going to use a lot of gouache at the end. It turned out I used a lot of gouache at the end to get the snow on his snow cap and all that. But still, there's nothing like to keep the white of the paper. All right, getting some darker values in there. Little brown, burnt umber, and my pencil is really sharp, as you can see, and I'm going to go over it with water with the brush, but with hardly any water on the brush. So now I'm just getting some kind of ridges, the shadows, the folds of the scarf in there, and trying to make it look as fluffy as possible. And I'm careful where I go. I'm kind of following, as you can see there, I'm kind of following the curve of the scarf. I want to make it, trying to make it look rounded. So I did like a little kind of a C there, half circle, doing the same thing there with my darker color, my darker brown. Doing a little bit more on the little tail, I guess, of the scarf. And again, trying to make sure I have the one in the back darker so they don't blend together. You can see that there's two of them there. Holding the pencil straight up and down is a great way to get a fine line, a point, and pressing kind of hard. So you can see what I did there just to make sure, again, that the scarves are separated. Now I go over with some lighter colors. Here's an orange to get some highlights. And whatever I'm doing on the scarf, I do on the cap. So I'm trying to make sure that they are both uniform in the colors. Like I'm using the same colors, the same highlights. And you can see here I'm doing the orange. And again, kind of trying to get the curve of the cap there. Now with the brush, it hardly has any water on it. I'm just kind of activating the pigment a little bit. So it's just a little darker, a little bit more prominent. I'm blending it up, creating a shadow there on the snowman and just kind of blending the dark in. Now I'm taking my light blue and creating a little shadow of the buttons and speeding this up here. Ness of the snowman. Now you notice I used a little violet there for the shadow in the corner of the scarf. Now I'm blending it together with the white, aquarelle white, which is a great, great color to blend with. All right, taking a little break from the snowman, wanting to get a little bit more of the landscape in because that will change the colors of the snowman, of the subject. So I'm going to start working on getting the landscape in. This is just a pink I put in there because I am going to do the sun. So we have to get some of, pinks and oranges, whatever the sun color is going to be. We need to have that reflection of it on the snow. Going in with a little more blue pencil here in a sec. And you'll notice I wet the paper just a touch first. And it's kind of a fun thing to do because it makes the pigment, activates the pigment right away when you put it down. So I just kind of wanted some, really distinctive ridges there in the snow. So that's kind of why I did that technique. Not And you'll notice how I'm holding the pencil. It's at about a 45. So I'm not holding it straight up and down because I want to cover, and I want to cover a larger area, but I also want it kind of a softer. I don't want any harsh mark on the paper. So I just want to lay the pigment down on there because I want it to be blurry, right? These are the trees in the background, so I want it to be blurry. Then I take a little water on my brush, blend it in, getting kind of close to the sun. I don't want it to blend in with the yellow. Might turn a little green with the blues going on in there. So I'm careful not to get too close to the yellow with my blues. And you can see some of the masking fluid is kind of coming off because I did like tiny little specks for, anticipating the snow. But we'll see what happens. Now, while it's wet, now I want the horizon to be kind of dark, like a darker line. So that's why I'm applying the pencil while the paper's still wet. And now these trees I decided are going to be more closer to the viewer so they can have more detail, but not a ton. That's kind of why I'm going over with the water again, keeping them somewhat blurry, but they are closer than the trees on the right. Okay, now see how that blue pencil is basically flat against the paper. That's because I want to cover, right? You can kind of see the technique, right? The marks that it's making. I'm trying to get a texture like snow. So I don't want it, I'm not going to hold it straight up and down or anything like that. So that's kind of a fun technique. And it's always great to play around with your pencils, whether they're watercolor or regular pencils, and to see the different marks that you can get by holding it all different like at all different angles. So 45 angle, 90, flat against the paper. And then also when your pencil is super sharp or when it's blunt, you get, of course, different marks. So, you can use all these marks to your advantage. Going back, now that I have some of the landscape in, I'm going back to the snowman. Okay, while the belly dries, going back up to his cap. getting some details in there. I'm still using the museum aquarels. I'm going to just kind of touch these lines with water just to blend them in a little bit. Then I will be going over with gouache for the snow. You can see I took off the masking fluid just with some tape, my hands. When everything was dry, I waited for everything to dry. Then I took off the masking fluid. Now just getting detail. Now it's time for the detail. So like I said, I'm just kind of touching the brush to the paper just to kind of activate the watercolor pencils on there. And I'm looking for some texture, so I'm using the brush to create a little texture as well. Getting the darker values in there and putting them right next to the white highlights there. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm purposely trying not to cover the white highlights. I'm trying to go right next to them and getting the shadow there under the cap. And then going to use my brush just a little bit to blend and create a shadow and to get more of a 3D, right, dimension there. And then here comes a happy face. And this is still with the aquarelle. This is black for the mouth, and then the little magenta mixed in with the orange for the carrot nose. A little shadow of the scarf, so the sun is on the other side of his face, right, his right side. Okay, now the fun part, creating the snow around the snowman there and make it look like he's really kind of nestled into the snow there. So creating some, I'm blending in that white pencil. And again, it's kind of like gouache, and there's gouache. I always like to use fresh gouache because once it dries, it never really works the same. So pro tip here, just squeeze out a tiny little bit of the gouache when you know you're going to use it. And here I am just kind of purposely making it messy, adding, you can see I have a lot of gouache on my brush that's not diluted with water, very much water. I mean, basically just the moisture from the brush is pretty much all I need. Getting some snow on his cap and then just kind of defining the edges of his body and face. I dab it with my fingers because I want to soften the edges there. I don't know why I do it. I just do it. And getting some snow on his cap. Now I'm using I think this is Polychromos black to get some really dark eyes there. And I also mix maybe a touch of Payne's gray in there. But I think this is black just to kind of get the kind of contrast. Now I'm going in and creating his arms. And I did a little sketch of them first, of the little twigs. And now I'm going in with the Caran d'Ache Museum Aquarelle. This branch is going to be lighter because it's the side that the sun is on. So I did like a base with yellow and then going over it with a brown. And then the other side, I think I did maybe a little more black for the shadow of the branch. And now just getting some, again, more little final touches, more little shadows. This is Museum Aquarelle. So I'll just touch it with my brush after to activate it a little bit. I'm actually using I think it's a size 0 or 1 brush. So I switched brushes to get more of a finer line. Using the same brush to get dipped in some gouache and now getting some snow on the branches. And the fun part, now getting the gouache milky. It's about a milky consistency. And I just tap the brush. You can use toothbrush. You can use any brush that you use, you're gonna get kind of different splatters. I dab a little bit with the tissue, and then this brush is a little wet, so I'm creating different kind of sizes of the snowflakes. This was so fun to paint and to draw. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. There he is. You can create Christmas cards out of this guy or gift it to somebody. Thank you for watching, fellow artists. If you're liking this video, please hit that like button and subscribe so I can make more videos for you. Thank you.